Hi, I'm Rebecca and this is Steph, and we are here with Inland Empire Couples Counseling again, continuing our series on communication skills in relationships. And in this video, we're talking a little bit less about a direct communication skill and more about being aware of what's happening with you to know what it is that you need to communicate with your partner. And that has to do with flooding. Steph's going to teach us what that is and how to recognize it and what we do when we get flooded.
Okay, so flooding is an really overwhelming emotional experience. Usually it is full of negative emotions. We go into this fight, flight, or freeze experience, and we can't really think, let alone communicate effectively, because we're producing adrenaline and cortisol, and we also produce physiological sensations. So our heart rate goes up, maybe we get hot, fidgety, and yeah, so it's just that really overwhelming sense of negative emotion.
And I would add that sometimes when people get flooded and overwhelmed, we go to like high activation, which is what you're talking about with the sweaty palms and just the feeling of like you got to do something. And some people will go to under activation where it's like shut down. I can't think, I need this to be over. Like I'm pulling inside of myself. And that still can be the experience of flooding when the emotion is overwhelming, but our body may have a different physical reaction to that emotional experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tell us how this shows up in relationships.
So in relationships, flooding can happen during conflict. Our partner probably knows exactly what to say or what look to give, or we know what to look for or what to listen for. And that trigger is what sends us into that emotional, overwhelming state. It can register as rage, hurt, panic, fear. And in relationships, it often feels like we can't reach our partner, maybe emotionally or physically. They're just unavailable, and that's really scary.
Yeah. So, are you ready to move to the next bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So, when we get flooded in relationships, what should we do? If you sense this happening in yourself.
Yeah, so it's really helpful to create some sort of pause, and that can be really difficult in the beginning when you're getting familiar with when you're flooded. So scaling can be really helpful. Trying to rate how overwhelmed you feel in an experience, and maybe if that's 1 to 5 where you're not too overwhelmed, you can take some deep breaths and continue your conversation. But most of the time when we're flooded, it's over a 6, and that's where we need to either we need to speak up somehow and say, hey, I need to take a break, or I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. I really like what therapists use, the phrase name it to tame it. So just speaking about what we're experiencing to allow our partner to understand us better and know that we need to slow down a bit.
Okay, so I'm going to back you up a little bit because I suspect that some of the people who are watching this video might not know what you're talking about when you talk about scaling. 1 to 10 over a 6, like, can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so if we're starting to feel triggered, and if maybe we feel we're starting to notice our heart rate go up, or it's really hard to start to listen to what our partner is saying, but we're trying maybe, so that's maybe 1 to 5, where we're noticing that this is getting really hard. And then over a 6 would be like just feeling really, really hurt, maybe really angry, and we're either shut down, like you said in the beginning, where we're not listening anymore, we're so overwhelmed we kind of turn inward, and then, or the opposite of just getting to that really reactive place of maybe yelling and saying some hurtful things. So that would, I guess, Am I answering your question?
I was thinking even more basic than that. Like, okay,
Oh,
so we're looking at feelings on putting a number to it because you can feel your feelings in different intensities, right? So
yeah.
if we're looking at 0 to 10 with whatever the feeling is, if that's, anger or hurt or, pain or fear, whatever, if how intensely are you feeling that feeling? That's what the scaling number is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're feeling that whatever the emotion is, maybe somewhere under a 5, so you're feeling it, but you still can listen to your partner. You're not super reactive. You're not shutting down, but you're kind of like feeling things. Then maybe you can stay engaged in the conversation. When that feeling gets intense, because you don't just like feel it or not, it can happen all along a spectrum. So when it gets more intense, that might be the place where you're not really able to think clearly anymore because this emotion has become so overwhelming, or you're not really able to listen, you're not really able to like think creatively or take your partner's perspective because what's happening for you internally is so intense that you're not able to access those other like better parts of yourself. And when when you're putting your number on it, oh yeah, this is really intense, it's definitely over a 6 on a 0 to 10 scale, that's a time where maybe I need to ask my partner for a break. This isn't going well, or I know that I'm not being my best self right now. I can't give you what you need, or listen to you the way that I want to listen to you. And so what would be best is for us to take a break from this. And the last video that we did, just for everybody's reference, you can go find the one on taking a break, where we talked about how do you do that? How do you communicate that to your partner? What do you need to do ahead of time, and why this can be a good idea?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So I love this suggestion that you came up with to talk to your partner about what it's like to be flooded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it can be really helpful when we're calm, right, to have a loving conversation with our partner of what it's like to be flooded, what it feels like in our body, the things that maybe we think, the worst fears that come up maybe, and what we need in those moments to how our partner can help us to calm back down. So that can be really helpful. So when it does happen, we know.
So to be clear, you're suggesting that we have this conversation about what it's like to be flooded, not when you're flooded,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay.
Yeah. Yes,
Because
definitely.
in the couples that we work with as therapists, right, we see this all the time, that maybe one person is having some experience and they're shut down because they're overwhelmed or because they're so much in fear, and the partner doesn't know that that's what's happening. They might misinterpret your cues. And so
Yeah.
you're shut down out of intense pain or fear, and your partner thinks that that means you don't care. And so now
Mm-hmm.
they're angry with you or whatever. There's a million different ways that could get misinterpreted. And so I love this suggestion to take a little bit of time to understand each other. What happens for you when you get flooded and overwhelmed? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And then when it happens, the next time you're having an intense conversation, your partner's probably going to have more empathy for what's going on for you. And they might even be less likely to misunderstand or misinterpret what you're going through. And, you the same for them. You'll actually understand them better. And your hard conversations will hopefully go better when you can more accurately interpret what the other person is experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Am I
definitely.
getting that right in what you intended with this? Talk to your partner about what it's like to be flooded.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly right. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
tell me about the positive mental image. How does having a positive mental image of your partner help in this?
Yeah, so the researchers talk about storing a positive memory of our partner, maybe a time that our partner was at their best, where you felt really loved and cared for and seen, and storing this, because when we get flooded, we're in this really negative emotional state, and sometimes our partner even is the enemy. And so when we have this positive mental image that we can pull up during these hard times, it helps to put a balance back in seeing our partner in a more objective way. So we don't just get wrapped up in being flooded and seeing them in a really negative way.
Right. It's like remembering that you love this person,
Mm-hmm.
remembering that they are your love and your friend, and having some image of that can help you get through the flooded feeling or want to reconnect with that person. You gave me, before we started recording, you gave me a couple examples of like positive mental images that I really liked.
Yeah, so when I was reading about it, the researchers talk about how they either picture their spouse telling them, goodbye, and they hope that they have a good day at, when they're leaving for work, or an image of their partner sending them off in the airport and waving goodbye. So things like that, a time where they felt really loved and cared for, and that it was really helpful when they weren't in such a great spot.
Right. That person that you're arguing with right now is the same person who did those kind, loving things for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's easy to forget those things when we're so upset.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. So wrap it up for us here. Like, how does using that scaling technique, putting a number on how intensely you're feeling something, help with the emotional overwhelm?
I think it helps us with being more aware of what's going on for ourselves. When we scale, we're taking a look at what's going on for us, and we're figuring out if we can continue having this conversation, and that's going to be effective. And if it's not, then we're sharing that, hey, I'm really overwhelmed. I need a break right now. I need a hug, whatever it might be, that when we have that conversation with our partner prior to conflict, right? Then we could go back to that and say, hey, I need that hug, or I need that break. Because, I really love you, and I don't want to get to a place where I'm flooded and I'm just speaking out of hurt or pain or fear or anger. So scaling can help put that pause and redirect the conversation into something that's more effective and successful, and with less pain, hopefully, where we can have a redo maybe. A lot of times redos are hard.
Right. And I would want people to know too that you can continue having a great conversation with your partner when you're feeling some of these negative or uncomfortable feelings, but on a smaller scale. So just because you feel a little bit angry or a little bit hurt or a little bit fearful, you still could continue in the conversation and have a great result. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Things don't have to go to a complete stop just because there was a little bit of something. We also want to pay attention to that there's not too much of it, that might cause us to become flooded and then not be able to have good conversations and good connections with our partners, right? That's what it's all about in the end.
Yeah, and I think it could be helpful too for maybe partners that just they get so they have a hard time with negative emotions in general, and so let's say they do scale at a lower number, but maybe their habit is to jump out and avoid a difficult conversation most of the time, so they often maybe end conversations prematurely. So it can help in a sense of oh wait, hey, I'm not that overwhelmed yet. I can stay in this and hang on a little bit longer. And that helps the other partner that so badly probably wants to connect and communicate.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Steph, for the work that you put into teaching us about flooding and scaling. And if anybody would like more info or to see more of these videos, you can check us out at iecouplescounseling.com.
Thank you.